Go.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is not Friday at 4. This is just Guy and Paul kind of hanging out. It's Wednesday, right, Paul?
It is Wednesday.
You bet. So we just thought, we promised to talk a little bit about Bernie, and we thought that maybe we would. And of course, we're talking about Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders. Last seen in the news last night, campaigning hard for Jamaal Bowman down outside of New York City, suburban New York. Jamaal Bowman is a member of the squad, and can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, but do you have your phone by the mic?
I do.
Keep it away from the mic.
Oh.
Yeah, it's making feedback noises.
Oh.
It gives you that.
Bad news.
Yeah, it's very.
Okay,
That's
that?
much better.
That's better?
Yep.
Okay, good. Put it right over here.
Yeah, put it on that side maybe.
See, we are just always learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, what is that noise?
About all this stuff. Okay.
Thank you for that, everybody. Just a little technical pause, but we'll get back to it. Here we are.
Yeah. All right. There. Yeah. Okay. So, Bernie Sanders, Paul, last seen stumping hard, perhaps even somewhat desperately, for Jamaal Bowman, who was an original member of the squad, in good standing with Alexandria Cortez and with now Becca Ballant and Ilhan Omar and all those guys.
Is she part of the squad now?
Yes, she's
Becca Ballant?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She's a sort of a junior member, but yes.
She's been confirmed as a...
Yeah, she's right in there. Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. And the reason that Jamaal Bowman went down to defeat in a Democratic primary is because, like all the other members of the squad, he's really pro-Hamas, and he's definitely anti-Israel. So in the past, he's sort of gotten a pass on that. But with what's going on now, where one of the things that Douglas Murray, who's a great thinker, and right up there with Jordan Peterson, said in a recent interview that when Hamas attacked Israel on October 6th, I think it was, it really showed people who the friends of Israel and the friends of Hamas are, because you kind of had to pick sides. And Bernie and some of the others, they tried to sort of straddle it, but more and more it's really clear their sympathies are with Hamas. Their talking points are Hamas's. And they say, oh, no, we're just for peace or whatever, but really they are in solidarity, in socialist solidarity with the victimized, oppressed Palestinians, a.k.a. Hamas. So Jamaal Bowman ran on that, and he got pounded by a guy named George Latimer, a pro-Israel Democrat, centrist Democrat. And I got to wonder, how much of this are we going to be seeing across the country, where the squad types are going to be marginalized? In fact, the whole sort of progressive movement that's kind of pushing the Democratic Party, is pushing Biden. If at some point the rest of the Democrats and the rest of the country are going to say, wow, seriously, you support Hamas? What's up with that? And they're not going to have any answer to that, because the fact is they do. They view any people group that is, quote unquote, oppressed, they're on their side, especially if the so-called oppressor is an ally of the United States of America, the way Israel is. For them, it's a slam dunk.
Yeah.
It really is great Satan and little Satan. They don't even believe in Satan.
Yeah, no,
but they might as well.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So, it almost doesn't matter who those victims are. I mean, they could be people who are using children as human shields. Oh, wait, they are, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they do, as long as they are against America and America's allies, then they'll give them a pass. But most voters, especially in New York, are thinking, not so much. Which brings me back.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of Jewish people in New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
probably the largest concentration outside of Israel, I would imagine,
Yeah.
of Jewish voters is in the greater New York area. And you remember the last time we talked, I talked about I was on the beach in Wells, Maine.
Yeah.
And we started chatting with this woman with a Star of David tattoo on her back, Jewish woman from the New York area who loved Bernie Sanders, but said, Bernie Sanders could never have been elected president. I went, huh. I said, why? Because if your own people group, your own ethnic identity group, which in his case is he's Jewish, if they won't support you, your own ethnic group won't support you, what chance do you have of being elected president? And you think about it, it makes sense. If for some reason Barack Obama had been dissed by 9/10 of the black voters, he probably wouldn't have done too well. And if we have an Hispanic candidate and the rest of the Hispanics say, no, we don't like that person, well, that person's probably not going to do very well either. And especially in the New York area, but really nationwide, as this woman said, 9 out of 10 Jewish people, they really do care a lot about Israel. They don't have this sort of anti-Israel, pro-Hamas attitude that Bernie Sanders and Jamaal Bowman and others have. And so they're going to say, Bernie, we love you, but
sorry.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about Bernie that makes him so pro-Hamas? And I know you say it's because it's anti-America in some ways to be anti-Israel.
All of these hardcore so-called pro-Palestinian people look just beneath the surface, and you will see a socialist activist. The folks on the State House lawn a couple months ago,
oh yeah,
clearly socialist activists. I saw the faces, knew the names, no doubt about it. Antifa types all the way, a lot of them.
Yes, and to add to it too, these Hamas extremists, Islamic extremists would laugh in the face of a lot of these people, unfortunately.
Sure.
I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't, whatever your opinion is, but I think unfortunately, because what it says to me is these people have been severely fooled. And to think that Bernie is pounding this drum, I understand to a certain level his opposition of Israel in the terms of the American industrial complex and the military's influence in places not just the Middle East, but really the entire globe, which I think he would argue, well, that's bad and that's wrong. And maybe it is. I certainly think it is to some degree. But to somehow say that Hamas is worth supporting when they're using children as shields and, they're literally terrorists and they if they were around somebody who was LGBTQ, they would murder them.
Sure.
Right? I mean, they would be happy to.
And, Bernie and his folks, they would step back and say, wait a minute, we don't support Hamas. We think both sides should lighten up. But when you look at Hamas's talking points, we want a ceasefire. What does Bernie want? He wants a ceasefire.
Yeah.
When he thinks that when Hamas thinks and the Palestinians think that Israel should be reported and indicted before the international criminal courts, that Bernie's all for that too. When they say America needs to cut off funding, Bernie says, I'm for cutting off funding. So you look at the policy points and objectives that Hamas and the pro-Palestinian lobby is pushing for, they seem to be quite in line with what Bernie is pushing.
Okay, so that's what I would say is there's a certain level of, like, I will agree with Bernie here in some ways where I say that the people of the people of Palestine, especially, people in Gaza, I think they're worth supporting, and I think that they're worth protecting, and I think their lives are worth something. Absolutely, you know, and the fact is true that the American influence in the Middle East is very strong. It's very powerful, and we are the strongest military force on the planet, if you can even necessarily consider it an American. It's more of a seems more of like a global policing to some degree, whereas part of me agrees with Bernie's point that maybe we shouldn't be there and having as much influence as we have as a country. But I think where I completely disagree with Bernie and think he and I are completely on a different page is like he thinks it's like a humanitarian thing and somehow being pro-Hamas, or not even pro-Hamas, but pro-Palestine, and somehow that equates to like the culture war in the United States and like LGBTQ rights and you know, anti-racism, Black Lives Matter. And
Well, what is the connection?
What is the connection?
Yeah.
to Bernie and those
to those things and the Palestinian pro-Palestinian movement? What's the connection?
I don't really know.
They're oppressed peoples.
Oh, oppressed peoples.
So there are
that's
identity groups who view themselves as oppressed, who are bonding together
Yes.
to take on their common enemy.
and that's where I'm like, okay, I just think they're so confused about who the common enemy is, right? Like I just don't. It doesn't really make any sense to me. It's like you have on one hand Islamic extremists who would literally kill gay people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have on the other hand the Israelis and the Jewish people of Israel who would not, and they're both oppressed peoples too. Like it's just like the all of it is so complicated, and I don't understand like Bernie's logic at all. And I'll say this: I was at the Burlington City Council meetings, and you know, hearing the students talk about the military-industrial complex and how, you know, we see F-35s flying over Vermont all the time, and they make missions over to the Middle East, and how terrible this is. Like I agree with them. Like I literally do agree with them. But then I'm like, but you guys are so misguided in what exactly those people that you're pretending, or not pretending, they believe it, that you're protecting.
Mm-hmm.
You're so misguided in what their values actually are. Sure, they're oppressed, you know. Sure, they're oppressed. I'm not saying they should be or shouldn't be, but do you see my point? Am I making any sense here? I like to ask you that because sometimes I feel like I don't. But
yeah, well, if actually, you know what? If anyone's watching this, feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
We're only going to be on for another 10 or 15 minutes, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
I gotta go have lunch with my grandpa.
Yeah.
But
I think it's for those who look at it with their eyes open, which is not all of them, but they will say, yeah, we know that Hamas would probably kill most of the outright Vermont people. You get that. But nevertheless, they're not here now, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, which is not always true. That phrase.
It's true.
And they say that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, I think you should reevaluate who your enemy is, because you live in America and you're free to be what you want to be. Don't think you want to go over to Gaza and start living how they're living. And that's just, maybe they're oppressed. Yes, absolutely. But they would not be okay with your choices. And I've never understood the mentality of that. I don't get it's just complete logical lapse. It's just like, how could this be?
Yeah.
But
I suspect you and I would have to live in the Middle East for a long time before we had any real sense of why they think the way they do.
I think you might be right about that. And I don't, that's the thing. When it comes to this argument, Israel, Palestine, you and I have had extensive conversations about it. And it's like, at risk of sounding anti-Semitic or Islamic, it's like, I'm so cautious about sharing my thoughts on it because I don't want to offend people. I mean, I'm not that afraid to offend people. I'm willing to say things, but it's like, I've never been there. I don't know what it's like over there. Right. I don't know what the treatment of these peoples are like. And it's hard to really say, especially this day and age, what's real and what's not.
So you respect your lack of knowledge in the situation.
Yeah, I try to.
Well, kudos to you, because more of us, including us older folks, maybe should be thinking that way too, because I've never been over there. And I've spoken to some people who've lived in both worlds. But boy, it's not a snap judgment kind of thing, is it?
Guy, maybe as Christians, that should be something we should be thinking about. I'd like to go there someday.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to fund our trip, let us know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There you go.
So
yeah,
we talked about Bernie so far.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about any of the stories today?
Huh. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
We can do that.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot more we could say, and we will say about Bernie. But
we got flies in the studio.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
A couple of interesting stories out of today's newspaper, I would say. Well, there was the one that I wrote, which I'll start with just because while you're pulling the other ones up.
Sure.
Apparently, we don't know what exactly is and what isn't. However, it seems that there is a Vermont energy lobbyist in some type of a relationship with chairman of Senate Natural Resources and Energy, Senator Chris Bray, I believe, of Addison County,
Mm-hmm.
and a lobbyist named Maggie Lenz. And
she's a contract lobbyist with a firm that has several clients who are large players in the Vermont energy scene.
Leonine Public Affairs.
That's right.
That's the name. And before we go any further, Guy and I were talking about this earlier, and we both agree. It's a nice photo. We want to see people in love, right? I mean,
sure.
What's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that.
Yeah.
Seriously, nothing is wrong with that. However, it does seem that if there were a romantic relationship between a lobbyist and a chairman of a very powerful committee in the State House, that might potentially be a conflict of interest.
Sure.
And after a bit of research, we found that, amongst organizations that she represents, one of them that her organization represents is Anvergrid. Anvergrid?
Yes, sounds right.
Anvergrid Renewable Energy. And they are involved in...
they build wind turbines.
They build wind turbines, and they build solar fields, and they do a lot of renewable energy projects across the country, and ultimately their parent company, of which they're a part of, Iberdrola, owns... they do this all over the globe. They do this in Africa, they do this in Asia, United States, Europe, anyhow.
And they built the Deerfield one in Searsburg, I think, in southern Vermont.
The Deerfield wind turbines, which are... that was in 2017. So to say, that there's a connection now to her and that and their relationship, who knows? Maybe they didn't even know each other back then, and that's not the point. The point is there a potential for something like this in the future?
Paul, I was thinking this. This is bringing something to mind, and it's at Burlington Mayor Emma Mulvaney Stanek and Plattergate.
Why is that?
The connection is because it was a lobbyist, Jessica Oskey, for the other big lobbying firm in Montpelier. Necrasson is the name of the firm. And she put together this plan to provide free meals and food cards and everything to the
mayor
and her family.
Yeah.
And on the face of it, probably a very innocent thing.
Sure.
And just trying to help out.
Yeah.
We got someone who's very busy. We support her. And
people are excited about it.
Yeah.
She got elected.
And so we certainly can't say, we see a clear conflict of interest there. However, as we pointed out in our talk last week, that could become a conflict of interest.
That's right.
It could become something where a lobbyist could then say, gee, I just brought 10 meals in the last month, and wasn't it delicious? If I want to keep my restaurant open, I could sure use a little bit of help with this permit because the city's just not being reasonable at all, Ms. Mayor.
Exactly.
And how close that line is.
Well,
and so it may be that Maggie Lenz is doing absolutely nothing. It's straight on the up and up, and yet you've got to wonder if you're someone who doesn't support Vermont Gas Systems, Green Mountain Power, and Evangrid, and their policy goals before the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee. Is this really a level playing field? And you don't know.
No, you don't.
So that's a concern.
No, and that's the thing. we want to be clear about this. If you guys are in love, that's wonderful.
Right.
I mean that like from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
Like,
and
great.
I know both these people, and they're both really nice people. I mean,
Yeah.
Chris Bray gets a lot of grief for some of the work he does, but in person, he's a soft-spoken, intelligent, reflective guy. Maggie Lenz is just a wonderful, warm person. I like them both a lot.
So great for them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not to say, these questions still need to be asked, and we have a responsibility to do so as journalists.
Right.
And I think that if we don't do these things, then things get out of hand, and that's the thing. Like on the surface, once again, it's like that's great. We want Emma Mulvaney Stanek and her family to be fed. Ultimately, we do. However, once you're in that position as a public official, the rules change and different rules apply, and that's just the way that it is.
Right.
So, any more stories you want to talk about? I mean, maybe go for another 5 minutes.
Yeah. Sure. Well, let's take a look.
Sure.
So Friday. Oh no, this one's just too good. The all-electric police cruiser. Good idea, bad idea. Yeah. And the city of Montpelier, which is, let's just say, they're pretty focused on their carbon footprint and reducing it as much as possible. The Montpelier PD weighed in and said, got a real problem with the EV car, because clearly some people have been saying, why don't you just have patrol cars be all EVs? And what they said was, we have to put hundreds of pounds of equipment. Think about all the guns and the vests and the flares and the cones and all the stuff that has to go into a police cruiser. And they're naturally very strong and heavy anyway. And an electric car, the heavier it is, the shorter its range, especially in the winter.
Oh yeah.
So you're on a car chase, you're chasing some guy down, and then, oh no, my battery just ran out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the police department said, maybe someday they'll be there, but they're not quite there yet.
Well, we've had this conversation a billion times on this show, and people that we talk with in our circles, it's like, sure, electric cars, great. When they're as reliable as gas-powered vehicles,
right.
I don't see a problem with it at all. And actually, if you want one now, I don't see a problem with it at all. But problems like this, and ultimately forcing people to use them too, can't get on board with that. Is that your phone?
Yep.
Okay. I was going to say, did something just break?
No. And speaking of break,
That's it?
Any news stories you want to talk about?
No, I think we got Cars and Creemees tonight, by the way. Anybody who wants to come down to Northfield, bring your cool car. I want to see you here in your motorcycle, your dirt bike, your classic car, your fast car. I mean, you can even drive your Camry 2003 if you want. I'm going to be outside today. I'm going to be streaming live the whole event. I'm going to be getting on camera some cool cars and hopefully have some interesting conversations with Vermonters, young Vermonters, and people that are of a similar mindset of us. So maybe not. I'd love to hear from others too, but I definitely want to hear from some car guys and hear their thoughts on electric vehicles and the future of energy. Really, that's more so what this is about to me, and maybe you guys will agree. So love to see you there, and Friday at 4, of course. We got Friday at 4.
Friday at 4.
So we'll be live on Friday at 4 o'clock, and hope to see you here. So thanks for everybody who tuned in, and be sure to like, subscribe, share, retweet, post, send an email to your grandma, whatever.